Why does Saturn have rings? What are the different types of clouds? How does an octopus swim? Why does a tiger have stripes? How do flowers grow?
Tell me why. The Video Encyclopedia is a reference work that's designed to show the answers to questions that young people ask. All materials used in this work are based upon the best-selling book series by Arkady Liokam.
What were the first fishes?
Fossils show that the first fishes occurred in the Ordovician period, which began about 460 million years ago. In the Silurian period, there were jawless fishes, the most primitive of the species. Their mouths were a simple opening, suitable to feeding on the tiny animals that lay hidden in the mud. In the Devonian period, fishes spread throughout the waters of our planet. Once fish evolved into having jaws, they were able to explore various food sources and feed more efficiently. Early jawed fishes were called placoderms. The jaws evolved from a set of gill arches that were present in the jawless fishes. Gill arches are the bony supports of the gills. Some placoderms lived in mid-water, some at the bottom. One group had tremendous teeth with sharp blades, and some were probably 30 feet long. Many fish got their names because of their appearance or some special quality about them. Shark comes from the Greek language, and it means sharp teeth. The sunfish has a round shape like the sun. The catfish gets its name because of its large, glaring eyes. The sole comes from the Latin word solia, which means many. Mackerel comes from the Danish word which means spots. Salmon comes from the Latin salmo, which means leaping fish. The trout loves to go after bait, and the name comes from the Latin tructa, which means greedy fish. There are at least 30,000 different kinds of fish. They're divided into 3 general types. One is the cartilaginous fish, which includes skates, sharks, and rays. Instead of a bony skeleton, they have one that is made of a firm but flexible substance. The second type is the bony fish, which includes the greatest number of fish now living. These fish have a complete bony skeleton and are covered with bony scales. The third group consists of lungfish, or fish having both gills and lungs. All lungfish live in fresh water. Their fins bear a faint resemblance to legs, and they sometimes come out on land.
How do fish breathe?
A fish breathes by means of its gills. It takes water in through its mouth. The water then flows over the gills and out behind the covers of the gills. The fish takes oxygen from the water to purify its blood. The anatomy of a fish is like warm-blooded animals. The pump which controls the flow of blood in a fish is the heart. It is located just behind and below the gills. The heart of a fish has 3 or 4 chambers. Fish have 2 small organs of smell which are located in nostrils on the head, and their ears are located inside their heads. Fish have a nervous system like other animals. Their sense of touch is very keen, and they taste as well as feel with their skin. Some fish are vegetarians, but most are predaceous, which means that they will eat other fish or aquatic animals and insects. Fish that emit eggs are described as oviparous. Oviparous fish lay 2 types of eggs. One type of eggs float. They're tiny and transparent, and they do not have as much yolk. They're called pelagic eggs. Eggs that sink are called demersal eggs. They're heavier and yolkier. Some fish give birth to living young, and they're called viviparous. Viviparous fish are guppies, platies, swordtails, and mollies. Fish do not sleep as we do. They rest when the light dims. A fish sees in water as we do in air. Fish have no tear glands, and they rely on the surrounding water to keep their eyes moist. In most fish, the eyes are placed on each side of the head. Fish see different images out of each eye and have a large field of vision.
What are eels?
Eels are fish with backbones that live in water and breathe through the gills. The eels of North America are the freshwater eels that live in lakes, ponds, and streams. Eels eat many things, including dead fish and small living creatures. Eels are most active at night. Their skin feels smooth, for it is slimy with mucus. Every eel caught in the Americas and Europe was born in the Atlantic Ocean near Bermuda. Moray eels live in rocks and coral reefs in the ocean. They hide in holes and crannies. When they are hungry, they dart out and snap up prey that swims near. Their jaws are very powerful, and they have sharp teeth.
Are there any electric fish?
There are several types of electric fish. One is the electric eel. However, the electric eel is not an eel. It belongs to the same order of fish as carp, catfish, and minnows. About 4/5 of its body consists of electric organs, which are special muscles that contain electric cells. When something disturbs it, the eel can discharge a powerful electric current that gives a shock. Another electric fish is the electric catfish of Africa. It can be 4 feet long and can be found in the larger rivers. This catfish can give a painful electric shock. The electric ray, sometimes called the torpedo ray, is found in all warm seas. This ray can grow to 5 feet long and can weigh up to 200 pounds. It is dark above and light below. It is round and flat and has a powerful tail. Its electric organs are situated between the head and gills. Experiments have shown that its electric power can be used up and that the power will not return until the creature has rested and eaten.
What do sharks eat?
Sharks feed mainly on bony fish, squid, and crustaceans. They also like turtles, dolphins, and birds. Sharks wander hundreds of miles looking for prey. They are usually found near the surface in the open sea. Sharks circle their food before closing in for the kill. Then they sweep their tails from side to side, stunning the prey with their mighty strokes. Some sharks are dangerous to man. The great white shark attacks humans and can grow to be 40 feet long. Sometimes, a group of sharks becomes so excited that they start biting anything. This is called a feeding frenzy, and it is a time when sharks are the most dangerous to be around. When they are in this state, they will eat rubber tires, tin cans, logs, boats, and each other. A shark uses its nose to find food. The hungrier it is, the more sensitive the nose becomes.
Why do catfish have whiskers?
A catfish does not have whiskers. Those things on the fish's mouth resemble cat's whiskers, but they are feelers that help the catfish know where he's going. They also send signals to let it know what is going on all around him. One South American species of catfish travels overland from pond to pond. Another builds a nest of blades of grass for its young. In the Nile River, there is a species that avoids notice of its enemies by swimming with its black belly up and its white back down.
What is the origin of the goldfish?
The ancestor of the goldfish is the carp. The Chinese have been breeding goldfish for centuries, and the Japanese have raised them for 400 years. Goldfish vary in size from 1.5 inches to about 12 inches. The common goldfish, the fantail, the comet, and the nymph are the breeds best known to the United States. The common goldfish has a slender body and rather short, tough fins. The fantail has a shorter, fatter body with a double tail and fins. The comet is slender with a long, single, deeply forked and free-flowing tail. The nymph is like the comet, but it has a short, round body. All of these fish may be kept in an aquarium in your home.
What are flatfish?
Flatfish are sole, flounder, fluke, halibut, and turbot. There are 500 different kinds of flatfish. They have bodies that are flat like a pancake. They lie and swim on one side with both of their eyes on top. Long ago, flatfish lived and moved in an upright position. They were being destroyed by their enemies, so they began to travel and rest entirely on their sides. This meant that one eye would be buried in the mud and the mouth was at a bad angle for eating. These fish would twist the buried eye around to where it could see. Gradually, the eye developed on the top of the head. Today, each flatfish goes through this evolutionary process starting at birth. Its eye actually travels across the top of its head and comes out on top.
Where did guppies come from?
The guppy comes from the northern part of South America, near Venezuela. Specimens were collected by Latchmere guppy and were sent to the British Museum to be identified. The official name for the guppy is Libistus reticulatus, but they're still better known as the guppy, after the man who found them. The male guppy has more brilliant coloring than the female, and no guppies have exactly the same coloring. The female guppy hatches her young within her body. When they are fully developed, they are delivered through her vent into the water as tiny but perfect fish. They're ready to swim, eat, and to avoid the larger fish that would eat them. The mother herself is apt to gobble a few of her babies if she's very hungry.
Why do salmon go upstream to spawn?
Salmon return to the place of their birth to reproduce. The pink salmon travels as much as 3,000 miles from the sea. When it enters fresh water, it is in fine condition, healthy and strong and fat. As soon as it reaches fresh water, it stops feeding. Sometimes a salmon will wear itself out trying to reach the exact place it wants to deposit its eggs. Many of the rivers that salmon have to cross have rapids, waterfalls, and jagged rocks. As a result, the salmon are often very thin and straggly looking by the time they have spawned.
What does an octopus eat?
When an octopus is hungry, it will eat practically anything it can capture and tear apart. An octopus has 8 tentacles or arms. They are long and flexible with rows of suckers on the underside. These suckers enable the octopus to grab and hold very tightly to anything it catches. The bite of an octopus can be poisonous. It has 2 very tough jaws like the beak of a parrot. The octopus can inject venom or poison with its bite. This venom can make a crab helpless, and an octopus likes to eat crabs. When an octopus lies quietly, the tentacles spread out over the floor where it is. When prey approaches, the octopus grabs it. If the prey is too large, the octopus can emit a cloud of inky black fluid that clouds the surrounding water, allowing the octopus to escape. An octopus can change color to match its surroundings. It can go from red to gray, yellow, brown, or blue-green. The octopus has been hunted for food since ancient Greek and Roman days. Today, Greeks, Italians, and Chinese consider it a great delicacy in their diets.
How do flying fish fly?
A flying fish gets into the air by swimming rapidly through the water with parts of its body breaking the surface. It goes along for some distance, gathering speed by moving its tail vigorously. Then, it spreads its fins and holds them stiffly, and the speed of its motion lifts it into the air. When the fish is in flight, it spreads out its front fins, which are enlarged, and holds them at an angle to the body. A flying fish may sail or glide for a distance of several hundred yards before it drops back into the water. Sometimes it strikes the crest of the waves and moves its tail to pick up additional power while in flight. The flying fish can soar high enough to land on the decks of huge ships.
What are jellyfish?
The jellyfish is an animal without a skeleton. It belongs to the species Coleonterata. It is shaped like an overturned bowl. It is made up of 2 thin layers of tissue with jelly-like material between them. 98% of its body is water. The jellyfish has no brain and no blood vessels. It does have tentacles or feelers which hang down like snakes from the rim of its umbrella-shaped body. Around the rim are usually a number of tiny eyes, and in the center of the body is the mouth. The rest of the animal is stomach. On the upper side of a fully grown jellyfish, there is a reproductive system in a pattern like a 4-leaf clover. In male jellyfish, this system produces sperm cells. In a female, it produces eggs. Jellyfish are among the oldest forms of life on Earth and have been in existence for more than 600 million years.
What are mollusks?
When people speak of shells, they usually mean those of soft-bodied animals known as mollusks. The shell is a mollusk skeleton and it's made of limestone. Certain glands in the mollusk are able to take limestone from the water and deposit it in tiny particles along and inside the shell. As the mollusk grows in size, its shell increases in thickness and size. If you have ever watched a snail and wondered how it moved, it is because the whole bottom part of a snail's body is really a foot. This foot is flat and smooth, and it contains muscles which the snail uses to glide across the ground just like a worm. This foot of a snail is so tough, though, that a snail can crawl along the edge of the sharpest razor without hurting itself. A snail never gets lost because it has an instinct that always guides it back to its hiding place. A snail may weigh less than ½ an ounce, but it can pull a weight that's more than a pound. Snails eat plants of various kinds with a tongue that is like a file with hundreds of tiny teeth. Barnacles are small shellfish that attach themselves to any convenient surface and actually lose their power of movement. Since millions of barnacles attach themselves to a ship, this can be quite a nuisance. The pirates who sailed the Caribbean Sea many years ago had to tip over their ships on the beaches to scrape off the barnacles.
Where do oysters come from?
An oyster is a complex creature with a mouth, gills, stomach, liver, intestines, and heart. An oyster eats algae and other microorganisms. These tiny food particles enter the body of an oyster with the water that constantly flows through the oyster when the shell is open. The food is strained from the water and it becomes entangled in the mucus secreted by the gills of the oyster. The oyster has an alimentary canal that begins at its mouth and 4 feelers that guard the mouth's opening. There is a narrow esophagus that opens into the stomach. A rod projects into the stomach and rotates to mix and stir their food. This rod contains the enzymes that digest the food. The body of an oyster is very tender. To protect itself, it secretes a mother-of-pearl lining to provide a smooth surface across its body. When an irritating object like a grain of sand gets inside an oyster shell, it is coated with layer after layer of mother-of-pearl. These layers gradually become what we call a pearl. Oysters live in shallow waters where they may be found cemented to rocks and shells.
Where do clams live?
Clams are found buried in sand or mud anywhere from just below the level of low tide out to depths of several hundred feet. Clams burrow in the sand to protect themselves from enemies and to secure firm anchorage. A clam has a large foot that it uses for burrowing and for withdrawing into the sand. When the clam wants to move from place to place, the first thing it does is extend this foot. There is a cavity in the foot that fills with blood when the clam extends it. This makes the tip of the foot swell up and it provides a kind of anchor. Then the clam contracts the muscles in the foot. Since the foot is anchored, it stays in place and the clam's body moves forward. The clam's tough shell prevents sand or mud from pressing inward and smothering it. A clam gets oxygen through its mantle, which has a neck-like portion that can stretch upward to the surface of the sand. This neck is called a siphon. It has 2 tubes. One tube sucks water, food, and oxygen in, and the second tube dispels water and waste products. A clam eats the tiniest animal life in the sea. People have been eating clams for thousands of years. Scientists have found huge piles of clam shells on the sites of ancient towns in North America.
What is a scallop?
A scallop is only the large muscle of certain mollusks. These muscles are used to open and close the shells, and they are the only part we eat. Scallops belong to the group of mollusks which include snails, clams, and oysters. There are 200 different species of scallops. The common scallop lives in bays close to shore and measures up to 3 inches across. The giant scallop is a sea scallop. It is found offshore in deeper waters and measures about 6 inches across.
What are mussels?
Mussels are similar to clams and oysters. They can anchor themselves to sand, rocks, or even shellfish. This is done with a byssus, which is composed of threads produced by a gland in the foot. Mussels breathe and eat by means of a tube called the siphon. This is divided into upper and lower parts by a partition. As water is drawn through the siphon, the gills take oxygen from it so the mussel can breathe. A small mouth in the tube captures the food as it floats by. The shell of the mussel is a delicate pearly blue in color, and it is used for making buttons.
What is a squid?
A squid is a mollusk or shellfish. It belongs to the species cephalopods, which means head-footed. This is because the foot is divided into long arm-like tentacles that grow out around the head. A squid has a long, slender body edged by triangular fins, a short, square head with well-developed eyes, and 10 arms. On the undersurface of the arms are rows of suckers. 2 of the arms or tentacles are longer than the others. These become a sort of hand. These hands are used to capture prey. The other 8 tentacles are used to transfer food to its mouth, where it is crunched by jaws which are located in the center of the circle of arms. Under the skin is a horny growth, something like a shell. Some giant squids in the North Atlantic have been measured to have a diameter of 52 feet, including tentacles.
What is a lobster?
A lobster is a crustacean, which means a hard-shelled animal. There are 3 species of true lobsters: American lobsters, which live along the Atlantic coast, European lobsters found on the eastern shores of the Atlantic, and the African lobster, which is found off the Cape of Good Hope. The lobster is encased in a suit of armor made of hard shell. It is dark green but turns red when the lobster is boiled. The shell covering the body is solid. The rest of the shell is divided into 7 segments, the last of which forms the tail. Lobsters have 4 pairs of walking legs, 2 pairs of which have small pincers for feet. In front of these are the great claws which serve as hands. One of them, the club, is very thick and heavy and is used for crushing tender objects. The other claw is more slender, curved, and provided with sharp teeth. It is used to seize prey. Lobsters walk on the bottom of the sea balanced on the tips of their walking legs. When they are alarmed, they make huge backward leaps, covering as much as 25 feet at a time. The female lobster lays from 5,000 to 100,000 eggs. She carries them for 10 months, glued to the swimmerets under her tail. As soon as they hatch, the mother fans the babies away. As a lobster grows, it sheds its shell. During the first year, it grows 14 to 17 times. When it is fully grown, a lobster sheds its shell only once a year. A little lobster swims at the surface until it is about 8 weeks old. Then it sinks down and makes its home on the sea bottom in shallow water.
How many kinds of crabs are there?
There are more than 1,000 kinds of crabs. Most crabs live in salt water, although there are several freshwater species. The eyes are on stalks which it can stick out or draw in at will. Crabs have 6 pairs of jaws. They eat small fish, coconuts, and each other. All crabs have 5 pairs of legs. The front pair are equipped with claws. The rear pair are flattened at the ends into paddles for swimming. On land, crabs generally move sidewise and can travel very quickly.
What is a horseshoe crab?
A horseshoe crab isn't a crab, and it doesn't look like a horseshoe. It is related to crabs and spiders. Its scientific name, Limulus polyphemus, describes its eyes. It has 4 eyes. One pair bulges from the sides, the other 2 are set close together at the front of the head. The horseshoe crab is a living fossil. It has existed in its present form for almost 200 million years. The entire body is armored by a thick shell. The tail is sword-shaped, long and pointed with barbs. It has 6 pairs of legs. 4 pairs are used for walking at the bottom of the ocean. A back pair is used for swimming. A short front pair helps hold food. The shoulders bear spikes. These grind and tear food. A horseshoe crab breathes by using gill books. Each gill book has about 150 thin leaves which take oxygen from the water.
What is a sponge?
A sponge is an animal belonging to the class known as porifera. The outer layer of living tissue surrounding the sponge is made of flat, scale-like cells. The cells lining the canals in the sponge are unlike those found in any other animal. They are column-shaped, and each ends in long lashers called flagella. At the bottom of the flagella is a sticky surface that catches the food. As the lashers beat the water through the sponge, it obtains oxygen and millions of tiny organisms for food. The waste products go out with the outgoing water, which is why sponges smell bad. This also discourages animals from eating sponges. Sponges have many shapes and are often brilliantly colored. Adult sponges never move around. A sponge has no head or mouth. It has no ears, eyes, feelers, or other sense organs. It has no heart, stomach, muscles, or nervous system. If a living sponge is cut in two, all you will see is a slimy mass with holes or channels running through it.
What is a starfish?
A starfish is an echinoderm, which means spiny-skinned. The starfish and its relatives all have well-developed nervous and digestive systems. Their eyes are at the tips of their arms and are protected by a circle of spines. Along the underside of their arms are grooves with little tube-like sucker feet. These are used for moving and as a nose. Sea stars cannot travel fast, but they can open an oyster. They attach the sucking discs of their feet to either half of the oyster shell and pull at it until the oyster finally opens. The leathery skin of a starfish is covered with very short spines. In the center of their bodies are button-shaped discs. Through these discs, they draw in or expel seawater. The discs on the underside act as mouths. Starfish can replace broken arms. They may grow a whole new body from one arm.
A wide range of subjects are available in this series now. Let's look at some of the questions that are covered in the Tell Me Why programs. Weather.
A tornado is a special kind of cyclone. It arises when conditions that cause ordinary thunderstorms are unusually violent. There is an updraft of air. There are winds blowing it.
Flowers.
A flower has a fragrance when certain essential oils are found in the petals. These oils are produced by the plant as part of its growing process.
Space.
Distances to the stars are so great that a unit for measuring distances was worked out. It's called a light year, and it is the distance that light travels in 1 year.
Water.
Water is a simple compound of two gases, hydrogen, a very light gas, and oxygen, a heavier active gas. When hydrogen is burned in oxygen, water is formed.
Gems.
When minerals are better, rarer, clearer, or more crystalline than others, they are called gems. Gems are the most prized and famous of all minerals. Diamonds, emeralds, rubies, and sapphires stand out as the true gems.
Ask for the additional volumes by subject from your dealer. They're available now.